Yeah, I know we do a lot of giggling and hee-heeing and ha-ha with the Diddy issue going on. Yeah, that's fun and games, but that really has nothing to do with our lives. What's about to happen next week? And I put it on my post. September 1st, it's about to go down. You think the price of everything is high now? Oh, baby, you ain't seen nothing. Y'all don't even see what the ILA is about to do. The International Longshoremen's Association Union. Y'all ain't never heard of them, have you? Let's find out what they do.
The International Longshoremen's Union, which represents about 45,000 workers at ports across the East and Gulf Coasts, is set to strike next week. That's if they can't come to a deal by the September 30th deadline. To discuss what impact a prolonged strike could have on the country's supply chains and the broader economy, we've got Jason Miller. He's a supply chain management professor over at Michigan State University. Jason, thanks for being here. I want to just jump into the potential impact that this could have, right? To what extent, and you know, for viewers listening who maybe are not familiar with the supply chain challenges and economic impact of a strike like this, talk to me about kind of the degree of the potential impact of this.
Yeah, the degree of impact really is going to be a function of how long a potential strike takes place. If we're looking at 24, 48 hours, it wouldn't be that disruptive on the big scale of things. And again, that's always taking everything back, thinking about the type of disruptions we saw in 2021 and 2022. On the other hand, you start getting into a week or more, you're going to have an extensive pileup, and you can think about this as each additional day at that point, it's exponentially longer to unwind the situation. So a few day strike, not that bad, but an extended strike will be very disruptive, especially for importers in certain sectors.
Jason, how likely do you think that is?
Certainly at this point right now, given both sides are not talking and they're very far off in terms of wages, in terms of discussion of automation, it seems likely that we will have a strike at this point. So my base case right now is there will be a strike. It's really a question of how long will that take place once it would begin.
What's your base case for the longevity of the strike and just the degree to which they do kind of have bargaining power given the degree of impact?
Yeah, so right now my base case would be we would get a couple days in, and I find it difficult to believe that the Biden administration will not invoke the Taft-Hartley Act and essentially have a commission form, deliver a report, and at that point there'll be an 80-day cooling off period. We would expect some slowdowns over that period because the workers may not be working quite as fast. But it's very difficult for me to see how this plays out, let's say a 2-week extended strike, given the amount of disruption that would take place.
So then given the fact that maybe it's not going to take that long, but let's play devil's advocate. Let's say that this strike actually happens. It does last for 1 or 2 weeks. Inflationary pressures that we could see as a result, economic impact, GDP hit that we could see as a result of a prolonged strike. I guess more accurately, Jason, what does that look like?
Yeah, so from an inflationary standpoint, I'm not very worried about that. When you look right now at the piece of the CPI that's still the biggest driver of year-over-year inflation, it's that shelter component. And we know that's coming down because of the trend of a new tenant rent index that's produced by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Where we do start to see more of an impact, though, is in certain industrial sectors. So on the export side, by far the most affected commodity is plastic resins. So we're going to start seeing, reduced exports because right now, year to date, we've shipped over 6 million metric tons of resin out of the U.S. in containers out of the East and Gulf Coast ports. On the import side, the most affected sector that I see is the auto space. Just given the key role that auto parts play as an import, this is especially the case for the German automakers. Their plants are in the U.S. South. There's really no opportunity to reroute those imports. And also the South Korean automakers, the majority of the auto parts imports from South Korea come into the U.S. through the East and Gulf Coast ports going to Alabama and Georgia as a final destination.
And Jason, I want to get your take on something I heard from Chris Versace. He's Tematica Research's chief investment officer. He was on our show yesterday and discussed the potential impact the strike could have on inflation and therefore future potential rate cuts from the Fed. Would love to get your reaction on the other side here.
We also have this upcoming longshoreman strike that could be, really crippling to supply chains, particularly on the East Coast and the Gulf Coast ports. Could also kind of, tick inflation back up. And if that happens, then we have to re-question what the Fed may do between now and the end of the year.
So, Jason, do you think that the potential inflationary pressures from this are going to be as widespread as Chris mentioned there? Do you think it'll be a little bit more contained to certain, products or sectors?
Yeah, I certainly view it as much more contained because, again, you always have to look and say, roughly 10% of consumer spending of all types comes from imports. That's based on data from the San Francisco Fed. And that's imports of all types, so even including crude oil that obviously isn't affected because it's coming primarily from Canada. So I'm not really worried about this from an inflation standpoint. I'm more worried about it from a sort of cascading disruption standpoint if we're looking at a multi-week disruption taking place.
Jason, I know you've dug into this a little bit, and if we do see a strike, you were able to kind of figure out what sectors or maybe what products will be hit the most. What did you find there?
Yeah, so apart from auto parts, as consumers, the biggest one that sort of jumped out to me is actually bananas. We've imported so far this year over 2 million metric tons of bananas. And most of those, about 2/3 to 75%, come in through the East and Gulf Coast ports because this is what we call a low value density item. It's something that you need to get it close to the final market with the most efficient transportation mode possible, which is containerized water in this case. So you can't reroute this product all through the West Coast and, truck bananas from Southern California all the way to, let's say, New York City. That's not a profitable endeavor. And so it's also a product with a short shelf life. And so that would be the one where if I was a consumer and as a consummate consumer of bananas myself, I'm looking at saying, okay, that could be one that if there's a multi-week strike, it could be hard to get the quantities that folks are used to just because it's a perishable product. And so from the everyday consumer standpoint, that's probably the one you feel the most. But a lot of other goods, we've already sort of front-loaded a lot of imports, so I don't see the holiday side of things being too disrupted at the moment.
All right, Jason Miller, thanks so much for joining us here this morning to break this down. Michigan State University
Y'all don't understand how bad this strike is going to be.
Supply.
This strike is going to be bad. Yeah, everything is fun and games right now. Ha ha, he he. Diddy has some baby oil. Ha ha. If this strike, it's going to start Tuesday. Don't say nobody told you. I'm the first one breaking it to you because most of y'all don't pay attention to economics. I get it. It's not fun. It don't excite you. But when it hit your pocketbook, that's when you pay attention. You might want to pay attention now and start stocking up. Because the goods that we get imported are about to stop. Paper towels, toilet paper, everything that's made in China and Indonesia, Taiwan, all those Asian countries that we get our items from, they come through those shipping containers. You know those big 18 wheelers with the containers on the top? They come over here by a boat. A lot of, like dude said, a lot of your perishable goods, they be shipped over here. But if they're not shipped over here, what's going to happen to the quantity? It's going to shrink. What's going to happen to the price of it once you have a large demand for it? The price goes up. Supply, demand. Y'all should have paid attention in school. You should have paid attention in school.
Defend Beyond with Darktrace, the essential cybersecurity platform for the era of AI.
So ports along the east and Gulf Coast are on the verge of a dock workers strike that could slam the U.S. Just a month before the election. The International Longshoremen's Association leader, his name is Harold Daggett, he says he's willing to push the economy past its breaking point if the U.S. Maritime Alliance doesn't agree to substantial wage hikes, up to 80% over several years, and safeguards against automation. For more on how this stalemate could play out in the next few days, let's welcome Congressman Jeff Van Drew from the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. And more importantly, to this point, he is from New Jersey, which is going to be hit hard if there is a strike. I should say, Congressman, right off the bat, we are getting...
And Houston going to be hit the hardest. Y'all know that, right? Now, why is Houston going to be hit the hardest? What is the main thing that comes through the port of Houston that we all need? Crude oil. You ain't think about that, did you? Crude oil got to be transported. Because remember that orange man that was bad? When we were pumping oil out of the ground from here, and we could spread it out from Canada all the way down to Houston. Remember that they called it the Keystone Pipeline. And Biden got rid of it. He said we got to go green. But then he turns around and goes to Saudi Arabia and asks the Prince of Saudi Arabia, hey man, we need some more oil. We need some more crude oil. They told that nigga, fuck you. Go on back over there. That's why gas is so high. You cut down the supply, but you still got a high demand. With the demand, the price goes up. This is one-on-one economics. Man, y'all shouldn't have got them psychology degrees. Y'all should have went for economics. Y'all should have went for anything that had to do with numbers. But apparently y'all didn't. I love numbers. I love numbers.
Confirmation from some sources at the Port Authority of New Jersey and New York that they are planning for picketing throughout the port complex. Now, some folks are taking that as an indication that there definitely will be a strike. What say you?
Well, I hope there isn't. I mean, nothing's definite in this world. So let's really, get into it and let's try to straighten this thing out. It's a big deal. And you said some of the numbers before. Yeah. $4.5 billion per day in affecting our economy. And we don't want to go back. I mean, we've already still have some supply chain problems. This will really exacerbate supply chain problems, can exacerbate food shortages. Also, a lot of these supplies for automobiles, a lot of the parts for automobiles go through these ports. This is a real big deal. Now, and this is important.
Mr. Daggett is a very shrewd negotiator. He, again, is the head of the Longshoremen's Union. He's been at it for a while. I think he's actually a third-generation longshoreman, so he knows the business well. The strike is timed to start on Tuesday. Tuesday is the day of the vice presidential debate. Tim Walz, if there is a strike, Tim Walz is going to be asked about that undeniably, and he's going to have a little egg on his face, right?
Well, I mean, he'll be asked about it. Let's see what his answer is. I mean, this is this is something you have to really think through. I always support workers, whether they're union or non-union. However, this is a case where it affects lots of other workers within the country and people and families and working families. So this requires presidential leadership. You know what this is all about? This is about presidential leadership. The president, not Taft-Hartley, he shouldn't invoke that, but he should get in there and really say, come on, let's straighten this out. Bang some heads together, work this thing through, make sure the workers get what they need, but also make sure the country gets what it needs in supplies. This is a really important time, and I don't think we're going to see that leadership. We haven't seen it all along. We haven't seen it with foreign affairs. We haven't seen it with the wall, with the border. We haven't seen it with a bunch of stuff. I don't know why we'd suddenly see it here. I actually hope that we do. this is beyond being partisan.
Of course,
We'll see what we'll
the
say.
president claims that he is a union guy and that nobody's been friendlier to the unions than he has in the history of the presidency. If he can't work this out before the strike, again, it's going to make that position hard to defend.
Well, it is. And if he is a union guy, he also cares about all the other unions and all the other families that are going to be affected by this. You can do this, but you got to be strong.
The shutdown could cost the economy between $3.8 to $4.4 billion a day. Nigga, do you know how bad that is? Estimates JP Morgan. We know JP Morgan Chase, the ones that tried to scam at the bank, them. This is what they do. Oh man, do you know how bad this is? On top of we got high ass inflation. Look here, I'm gonna tell you now, man. And I'm finna start inboxing people, man. Start stacking up. I already called my mama. I already told her, hey, start stacking. I just got a bunch of paper towels, toilet paper. What did I get from Amazon? I'm going next week. I'm buying a bunch of beans, a bunch of turkey, a bunch of pork, and a bunch of chicken. I'm telling you, shit finna get crazy. It's about to get real crazy real fast.
You know, that's the thing, that's the word that you don't think of, quite frankly, when you think of this president or the vice president who now wants to be vice president. There's nothing strong in anything they've shown in leadership. And this requires real strength.
Yeah.
This isn't easy. These are your own American people that are affected by this on both sides of it. But I think we can work out a fair agreement, do the right thing, and yet at the same time, you know, care about the workers.
Congressman Jeff Van Drew, thank you so much for being here. I know you're going to be busy this weekend working on this problem.
When school.
Don't say I didn't tell you.